Welcome to the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, a weekly broadcast sponsored by CVC Success Group, hosted each week by industry speaker, coach, author, and educator Jerry Eisenhower. Our presentations are produced to assist business owners and managers in turning their business dreams into their business realities. And now, here is your host, Jerry Eisenhower.
And I want to welcome you to another episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. This podcast is sponsored every episode by the CVC Success Group. Keep in mind, what's our mission? What's our goal? It's to provide the tools that people like you need to make your business dreams into your business realities. So anyway, let's move forward. Today, I got some great, exciting guests on here, and we're going to talk about something that, to be honest with you, I hate to talk about because it's not my area of expertise. So when I want to know about these things, these are the kind of people that I would expect to have on my team, that I would send them an email or a phone call saying, hey, tell me what these numbers mean. So today I have two specialists in the financial world. And I've known both of them for a number of years, and I've recommended them, and I know how stout their abilities are. So my guest, first of all, is Patty Lawrence, who is a fractional CFO. That stands for Chief Financial Officer. And that could also be called an outsourced CFO because she's not a full-time employee. Think of her kind of like being an attorney or someone else you would have on your staff, but from a remote distance. My other guest today is Suzanne Dombroski. I've known Suzanne probably 25 years. When I was president of CSIA, Suzanne was the financial person that I depended on because she was the treasurer. So I know both of these ladies are going to bring some great information today. So Patty, are you out there ready to rock and roll with us today?
I sure am, Jerry.
Okay, good enough. Suzanne, are you connected up and ready to rock and roll?
Yes, sir. I'm all ready to go.
There you go. So both of these ladies, so you know, come from Pennsylvania. They live in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania geographic area. So as we go into this, and I believe both of them's offices are in Lancaster, I'm not going to swear to that. So I'm going to start off with the questions. And so you know, Suzanne is coming in this as an accounting expert. Patty's coming in this as a CFO expert. So I want to identify what's the difference in these two positions, because a lot of people think, well, my accountant is my CFO. And I want to dispel that rumor and let you know. So Suzanne, let me start with you. What's the role of an in-house bookkeeper and the fractional, as I call it, or outsourced accountant? What would be the job description if somebody had you as that outsourced accountant?
Well, Jerry, I like to think of an in-house bookkeeper or accountant as kind of a transactional person for the business. So they're going to do things like paying your bills and sending invoices, receiving payments, making deposits, putting everything in order for you. And as an outsourced CPA, specializing in tax matters in particular, our role is to help the bookkeeper or the in-house accountant make sure they're keeping their records in good order, make recommendations to them for and to the business owner for good tax planning. I always look at it this way. They don't know what I know, so it's my job to share what I know and fill in the gaps of what is lacking in-house within the business for good financial management.
That's a great answer, Suzanne. I appreciate that. So Patty, I'm going to bring the same question to you, because you are a CFO that works on a fractional or outsourced basis where you're not a full-time employee. You're probably working, much as Suzanne, on a retainer. So tell me what the role of the CFO is. Tell me what a good job description will be if someone were looking to add the use of an outsourced CFO, because we both know that small companies do not need a full-time CFO. So what's your job description?
Sure, Jerry. First, let's start with CFO. What is that? Well, it stands for Chief Financial Officer. And typically, that individual functions as the financial person for the company. So, in a big company, they have full-time CFOs. And basically, the individual is usually a dynamic person, high caliber financial professional, and they've worked inside companies. So they know the ins and the outs of the business and the industry as well. And they typically lead the financial and managerial activities of a business. So the administrative functions, say, looking at processes and workflows, setting company policies and priorities, participating on the development of strategy, so setting strategy and long-term goals for the organization, and understanding and knowing the outside economic environment and the competitive environment, including bank and vendor relations, and the revenue model or the profit model, the business model of the actual company, as well as focus on the cash flow, operations, process, and overall flow of the business.
How important, Patty, is it for the accountant and the CFO to have a great working relationship? Can that be a problem if the accountant and the CFO don't agree on processes or procedures in the accounting system?
That's a great question. Typically, they hopefully they should be in alignment as it relates to that. But typically, the outside CPA tax professional doesn't get too involved with the inner workings and workflows and processes and priorities unless it has a tax implication. So where the crossover and the best fit is for folks like Suzanne and I to work together is when we are implementing a tax strategy. So if there's a strategic tax or tax planning aspect that we need to focus on, so we would take that and design things with the company owner and the company structure, the management structure inside the company to ensure that that is achieved.
Gotcha. So I think it's real interesting. When I first started coaching, I contacted Suzanne one day and I said, Suzanne, tell me what makes a CFO. Tell me what is that? Tell me, how do you get trained as a CFO? So that actually led to mine and your introduction to each other. So Suzanne, could you tell me the relationship you have with Patty on a professional basis, please?
Sure, Jerry. Patty and I get along great and have for many years. And I think just to accentuate a bit of what Patty just went over, there is a real connected working relationship where, Patty is not focusing on the tax planning, the positioning of that, but they blend together. So whereas I'm not going to necessarily be involved with my clients in setting their strategy and looking at their forecasting per se, other than to try to minimize taxes for them. Whereas Patty's looking for a lot more holistic things in the business than I would be doing. I'm trying to keep them on the straight and narrow and make decisions that impact their tax liabilities and save them money where I can.
Patty, do you do your own taxes?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, Suzanne is my tax accountant.
That's the point I was getting. That was the point I was getting to, is so you guys know, Suzanne is Patty's accountant. In other words, Suzanne prepares Patty's taxes because that's not Patty's expertise. Patty's expertise is putting together and constructing what we call GPS to the future. Patty, would you agree with that statement?
I most certainly would, Jerry. I think that's a huge differentiator between what Suzanne does and what I do. Although the differentiation is that her work relates to the tax GPS. Mine relates to implementation as it relates to the tax GPS, but it also relates to operations. So financial management as it relates to the effect of operating the operations of a business on the financial results.
Gotcha. So in range of full disclosure, so you're aware, Suzanne is involved in the ownership of a chimney sweep blue collar business, correct, Suzanne?
That is correct. My husband started his business in 1978 and is still sweeping.
That's correct. And Patty, in full disclosure, you work with blue collar chimney sweep business owners. Would that be correct?
That is correct. I have several current clients that I work with that are in the chimney and masonry industry.
Correct. Because Patty is a person that I've advised and recommended in the past to other people. In fact, did that yesterday. So you probably got a phone call yesterday from a gentleman. So, Suzanne, this question's to you. Someone is looking to engage a new accountant, or they've never had one, and they're lost. So what are they looking for? And again, we're basing this on blue collar businesses, service businesses. What does a person do? How do they find the great accountant that they're looking for to do the job that you do?
Well, Jerry, I think it's real important, first of all, to perhaps interview more than one person to see how they work. In my view, it is a very personalized service. You have to be flexible. You have to understand the business that you're trying to serve and how they work and what their in-house talent is or isn't, so that we can proactively provide advice and counsel to them on financial and tax matters. To me, tax returns are a work of art. They are my art, but they're history. I am recording what already happened and putting it in good form for the government and trying to save taxes along the way. But whatever happened has already happened. And so it's a real important part of my job to understand my clients' businesses and use the data that I know to help them inform their future decisions and work with CFOs like Patty to accomplish that.
Okay, so
but it's
Suzanne,
a very, very
go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's a very, very personalized service to me, and every business is different. So if somebody tells you they have a certain way of working and this is how it works and this is their cookie cutter, I would not be interested in working with that person if I were looking for an accountant. I'd be looking for someone much more flexible and providing a more personalized service.
Okay, so Susanna, could I compare what you do, that you are a financial historian that can tell us what the past is like in this company? Would that be a good descriptive term?
Well, yes, but to me, that's a minor part of what I do, because I can't change it. So, you're doomed to repeat it, right? So you want to know how you can change, have a better outcome, be knowledgeable of what happened in the past, but with that foundation, where can you go in the future? Because we want our businesses to be successful. That's why we're in it, right? That's why we start a business. We want to provide whatever service that we have and be successful at it and enhance other people's businesses. So I think that the history is what I record, but how that impacts the future is really the importance of what we do.
Gotcha. So I'm going to turn the question to you, Patty. And I could say, just call Patty, but instead of doing that, because you can only handle so many clients and you're pretty busy right now, but what would you tell someone who's searching for a CFO to assist them in properly planning for the future?
Great question. I would say many of the points that Suzanne made about looking for and the criteria around selection of the right person. So looking for the right fit, not a cookie cutter, understanding the industry, understanding that individual as well. How do they get their best work? How do they make their decisions? How do they run their business? Those are really very important items to know when you're making that, decision to move forward with a client. So we offer services from accounting and bookkeeping on an outsourced basis all the way up to CFO services, so consulting CFO. And what we're doing with people is looking internally to the things they have already or what they don't have and need to have in order to make what we call data-driven decisions. So Suzanne was talking about looking in the rear view mirror and not really being able to impact other than the tax planning aspect of it, but looking in the rear view mirror and recording things according to IRS regulations, basically for tax purposes, as well as local and state taxes. But when we were working with our clients, we're looking at their future. So we're looking at planning for the future. What are some projections that we can do, we can help you with? And we call that scenario planning. And scenario planning is just a fancy word for what if. So what if your sales increased by 50%? What if your fixed cost went down, or you moved into a new building and they went up? Looking at developing and managing budgets, those are forward looking, and we're measuring against those benchmarks and those expectations that we set forth and include in a budget. We're looking at things like cash projections. Right now, that's something that we're really working hard with our clients with. What are your cash projections in this COVID environment? And what if analysis. So that's that scenario planning again. What if you're not allowed to do the things you need to be doing as a business owner for X number of weeks? What does that look like? And what's the financial impact of that? So you can make better decisions.
Gotcha. So I got a real good question for each of you. And this is going to be the question. And I'm going to ask Patty first. Well, that all sounds great. But Patty, I'm so far in debt, I can't even think about hiring you. What would you tell that person?
Well, I would tell that person, first of all, we need to come up with a plan to figure out I can pay for myself, actually. If we're doing the right things when we work together, my fee can pay for itself over the long run. Okay. So and how does that happen? Well, that happens when we start looking at your business, because I guarantee there is hidden money inside your business. And what does that mean, hidden money? Well, that is cash that is tied up in your business in some way, maybe in your accounts receivable. Maybe it's that a line of business or service that is not as profitable as it could be. Maybe that is translates into you've been giving your people well-deserved raises along the way over the past say 3 years, but you've never raised your price during that same period of time. So it's asking those kinds of questions to understand where that money is hidden within the business and put together plans with the owner to release it. Okay, to release it, to find it and get it back into the business and build up those cash reserves.
That's great. So, Suzanne, same question to you. Guy says, hey, I don't need an accountant. I'm using H&R Block. I just take them a box of all my receipts and they do my taxes every year. What do I need somebody like you for?
Well, I won't say anything about H&R Block except that I think all they have to do is come meet with me and bring me their tax returns. And if I can't project value to them, then I guess we shouldn't be working together. But I guarantee that we can project value in what we do, because there's just a lot to uncover, and it's a really fun process for us. So I give a consult. My first consult with a new person is entirely free, and we have to talk and we have to decide whether, I can add value to them. And price is never an issue when
Right.
that happens.
And
Never.
that's what people have to realize. Professional people like myself and like both of you will have an initial phone call to get to know each other, because it's got to work on both sides. If it doesn't work on
Yes.
both sides, we're in trouble. So we got to make sure we get along. Okay, so right now we're in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis. And Patty, Lawrence, I don't even think you were good enough to predict this present crisis that we're undergoing. If you do, please let us know when you answer this question that you were able to predict this thing, because none of us did. But what I want to ask you is, what's the questions people are asking you today? What's the most common questions?
That's a great question. And first off, if I was that good at predicting and saw this coming, other than as it was approaching us from, it was kind of marching across the globe, I kind of saw that coming, but I could not have predicted that in March of 2020 in people's budgets that we had this covered. We did not, because if I was that good, I would be retired on an island somewhere. But what is the question that I'm getting asked the most right now? I would say it is around the Paycheck Protection Program, that whole loan program that was rolled out maybe about 3 weeks ago with the SBA and your local lender, just getting people either prepped for it from an application standpoint, interpreting the language of it and what it's there to cover, as well as trying to decipher what the SBA/local lenders are requiring the use of these funds for, because each local lender, your local lender, has a hand in it, especially in the application process, as well as servicing the loan and extending the loan, because it's owned by your local bank. They are able to put some of their spin, if you will, on top of the basic requirements that are given by the SBA. So it's been kind of an interesting process to see that roll out over time, especially in a void of SBA guidance. SBA has provided very little direction and guidance as it relates to this, and people are getting funded, and all they know is that their 8-week period to spend this money has begun. And with that, they aren't sure what the next steps are. So it's kind of flying blind, and not knowing next steps, other than they are able to get a portion of it forgiven based on some calculations and formulas, but then they're not sure what that process is. So the processes are being, let's say, given out one spoonful at a time, unfortunately, and it doesn't provide many people with much time to react because, like I said, some of these people have already been funded, and their 8 week clock is ticking, and they have to make very timely decisions and very important decisions as to how this is spent before that 8 week hard stop comes up.
So everybody listen carefully, please. We don't know all the answers, and you need to be aware of this. This is where the expertise is going to come in. So, Suzanne, same question to you. Is it payroll protection is your major questions? What kind of questions are your clients asking you today?
Well, of course, the stay-at-home orders came down right in the middle of tax season. Thank you very much. So right away, it became, what kind of assistance can I get? What programs can I apply for? So some of that with the Paycheck Protection Plan, but also what else is available if we can't get that. For self-employed people who maybe didn't have their tax things to us yet because it was mid-March, now they need their tax return. And so it's been a very hectic time for us to try to serve a number of masters here in getting people what they need and prioritizing while working from home remotely. So that's been a challenge. But right now, what I'm hearing from people that have gotten the funding, their big concern is, how are we going to bring our people back? Because they're now competing with unemployment. So maybe they laid their people off. They didn't have the cash reserves to continue to pay them while they were shut down. And so their people went on unemployment. And now they want to bring them back because they got the Paycheck Protection money. And it becomes a dilemma when their employees are earning more on unemployment than they're willing to pay them to come back their normal salary.
Yeah,
so
and
it's a pickle.
And that's one of my major challenges too. And you two ladies live in a state with a governor that's making some pretty outrageous statements out there about this. I got to wonder about this governor of Pennsylvania because of some of the things I hear. So in Pennsylvania, y'all got some real challenges from your state leadership. That's unreal. So here's the next question. And we're on here. And if you were speaking to a client or speaking in front of a group, what would be the major piece of advice that you would pass on to others in the end of April of 2020 as we're in the 6th week of the COVID-19 crisis? So first to you, Patty, what would be the advice that you would be passing to a client today based on the business climate?
I think that's funny because I think it's the same advice today as I was giving them when all of this hit, and that is stay calm. And the reason I say stay calm is because we're going to get through this. We are going to get through this, but it's going to look different on the other side. So what I've been working with my clients on is, how do we best position ourselves? What's the next best decision you can make on a daily basis to keep your position and protect your position so that you are in a great situation on the other side of this? So it's making that next best decision every day.
That is sounding great. So we still got to use our right practices and don't panic. Think clearly, because this is more important than ever. So I got a last question for both of you I'm going to ask. And Patty, I'm going to start with you. I've asked Suzanne first, but I'm going to follow this one on you because to be honest with you, this probably falls more on the side of the CFO. And Suzanne, I'm going to ask you afterwards because I want your opinion on this. Okay, so here it is. We all know that it's a great business practice to have 6 months of reserves available to us. And I know each of you have watched people that within a matter of a week to 2 weeks have went into tremendous personal turmoil and business crisis because those reserves didn't exist. So how do people build these reserves? So for the next time a crisis comes, we're not at the point that we were in this present crisis. So Patty, what's your advice to this person? And what do you advise them to build in reserves based on what we've learned in the last 2 months?
Yeah, great question and very timely, of course. So I'm recommending that my clients have at least 6 months worth of expenses on hand. That doesn't include labor because you kind of pay for labor as you go, as you earn your revenue. But as far as overhead expenses, 6 months is what we should have. So, and then the next question is, well, how do you get that? Well, I would liken it to saving up for maybe a major purchase. So let's say, you set aside X number of dollars per week, per month, you name it, but put together a savings plan, okay? Because it's no different than saving up for it. Saving up for a rainy day is no different than saving up for a vehicle purchase, or if you want to buy a building, or you want to make some other kind of major purchase in your life, whether it's in the personal side or the business side. That process is very similar. So I say, figure out what it is that you can afford and put it away. Then what we need to do is go work on your business and find out where there's more hidden cash, right? Let's go deep diving, right, into your business and look at the profitability side of it, and then see if there's more out there that we can uncover that could add to that at a quicker pace. So we can kind of take that and up the velocity, all right, up the speed at which we are putting away that money. And then maybe we get there a little more quickly than we had initially anticipated.
So, Suzanne, anything you would add to what Patty suggested as far as how do you build this reserve? Because it sounds like what Patty's telling us is we got the money in our business a lot of times, we're not managing it, we don't have a budget. So what would you add to that, Suzanne?
That's right, Jerry. I would say, performing that budget analysis to determine what your fixed costs are that you need to cover, and what can be diverted to starting to build those cash reserves. Because as we all know, cash is king, and we learned it really at this time. It's king for survival. The other thing I would add to that is that you have to, many businesses have lines of credit, okay? So the line of credit many times is always at the max. Well, then you have nowhere to turn. So you do want to have cash reserves, but you also want to have a good banking relationship. You want to have a line of credit at the ready so that, in good times, you're paying that line down and off. And then when you're profitable, you can get that line extended. So if you have a tremendous downturn, you have someplace to go. So a combination of the cash reserves, a good banking relationship, and a solid program of good use of a line of credit, which means only tap into it when you need to and pay it back down as soon as you can. Don't rely on it.
Thank you. Both of you ladies know Jerry's story, and both of you have talked about things that I'll be perfectly honest with you. If I'd have had a Patty or a Suzanne advising me of these things years ago, I wouldn't have took the financial downfall I took in 2010. I've written a book about it. I can tell you all the horror stories. I can tell you when the banker becomes your enemy. I can tell you all kinds of stories, and I share that with my clients. And in this period of time, that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to reach in my past and tried to think back in 2007, 2008, 2009, what could I have done to avoid the chaos that I went through? And there were so many things that I could have done. And these ladies have just shared these things with you because, like I said, Suzanne said it. I personally funded my business dealing with the bank. Suzanne, when I tell you this, I want you to understand. I had a life insurance policy with the bank as a beneficiary. Suzanne, do you ever see that with your clients that they actually have an insurance policy that the bank is the beneficiary?
Unfortunately, yes. I don't recommend that, but
Right.
yeah.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I want to tell you right now that's when I should have said, whoa, I got a problem because my life insurance policy had 2 commas in it, Patty. Do you see people that are in debt to that point, Patty?
I have seen that, and unfortunately, some of it relates to poor choice. Unfortunately, the second is poor timing. So timing we can actually get out in front of, and we can be a little more prepared for that. And poor choices. Sometimes it's just I call it the ready, fire, aim syndrome, and people aren't planning before they make a decision and make it the pull the trigger on something. They're actually doing that first and then kind of going back, well, oh well, that's kind of too late. I really wanted to do this, so I just went ahead and did it.
Yeah. So Patty just described me 15 years ago. And Suzanne knew me 15 years ago. She can probably have shaken her head. Yeah. But the lessons I learned 10 years ago was very painful. And I know that there are people listening to this right now that have went through tremendous pain. So what you've got to do at this point in time is you got to make the hard decisions. You got to make the decisions to get your financial house in order. Listen to what we've talked about. Listen to where you want to go. If you don't have a good accountant to track the past, you need to get one. If you don't have someone that can help you put that GPS forward into the future, get one. If you think you can't afford it, I don't think you cannot afford to do this because this is your future. This is what you work for, and you don't want to see this disappear. And as we come out of this crisis, make yourself a goal that if we go into a crisis situation like this in the future, you're prepared. Listen to Dave Ramsey, listen to other financial experts, build your budgets, build your GPS. Don't repeat this again. You have a unique learning opportunity. And one thing that one person shared with us in our roundtable discussions a couple weeks ago was his name was Tom Ziegler. And Tom Ziegler is the son of Zig Ziglar. And Tom talked about the time in the American history that was most admired by him, which was World War II. And he said what happened here was that America could have been overrun by the Japanese. In other words, at the time, if the Japanese decided to keep going, we couldn't have stopped them till they got the Mississippi River. But America came back from this. And this is what we have to do. We have to come back. And America came back in World War II, and it was tough. We changed a lot of things, but we came back. And Tom said, you know what did that? No, what did it, Tom? He said the children of the Depression and the pain that their parents went through in the Depression is what prepared Americans 15 years later to be able to come back. And that's what the three of us wish for each of you. Ladies, I want to thank you so much for being on this today and being with us. I hope I can invite you both back sometime. But I really appreciate you taking your times out of the day today. So with that, this is going to end another episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. It's sponsored every week by CVC Success Group. Let us know how we can help you turn your business dreams into your business realities. Talk to you next time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us here each week at the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, sponsored by CVC Success Group, providing you the coaching and educational outreach services you need to move to your dream destination in business and in life.